Well, hello. You've just completed Module 3, Working with People. Or perhaps you've landed randomly on this particular video, in which case I'd have to say you've missed some amazing content, but you've got the chance to now go back over and pick up on some of the messages that are presented across this module. The overall course is positive risk taking, which is helping you to be thinking about how you go about making challenging risk taking decisions. It's very much underpinned by this whole idea of working with risk. And however you go about those particular challenges, those particular functions, I have to say, we're working with people. That's a core of what our work is about. And that's why this module is entitled that way. So, the content, I've tried to address a number of questions. First of all, it's asking whether you feel from your value base, whether you're more of the lone wolf or do you enjoy running with the herd, as two different methods of working. I've addressed those by saying whichever one suits you best, and take myself as an example, I'd say I'm a mixture of both. So even with somebody who is predominantly a lone wolf, that person will still be looking for the creative collaborations. There is still a need to connect with other people for very specific purposes or around particular projects. So working with people is still vitally important. I've come on to explore what that concept of person-centered practice or person-centered ways of working looks like. And even though there can be some misinterpretation, maybe even confusion around terminology that goes with it, I hope what I've presented primarily is that person-centered working is really looking at people from a can-do perspective. What can the person do? What do they want to do? What are their wishes rather than what we feel they need? So the idea of being person-centered is very, very much about helping a person to find their own creative solutions to the challenges that they're working with. But it's not displacing all responsibility back to them. It's working in collaboration. And as such, we've looked very much at individual engagement. And that concept of engagement is a very important one for raising another question, which in this module I've reflected back to 1990 when it first came up for me. Are you more of a travel agent or are you more of a travel companion? And from this perspective of person-centered working and creative collaboration, this whole idea of working with people, then I'm challenging you to be more of that travel companion, feeling able to go on the journey with somebody, because that's where we're really establishing that stronger trusting relationship on which we're more aware of, more in contact with how things are changing. And that is a position from where both sides, the client and ourselves, we can both feel motivated to seriously consider taking some risks in a very clearly thought out, reasoned, and defensible way. And that's an important statement. But I'm also saying across this module that we're not just working in isolation. Lone wolf or one-to-one working. I know some people where I've been involved with crisis services, they'll often say, in the moment, I'm having to work on my own. I'm having to make a decision on my own. And yes, I acknowledge that, but that is still the rare occurrence. And I would still say most, if not all, of the tools across the whole of this course are relevant and supportive to people in that situation. But even when you're working in a crisis type of service, you are still part of a team, you are still providing a service 24/7, and that means you're working with people. So, teamwork is another vitally important element of what we need to address for thinking about decision making, but also thinking about how we deliver on person centered working. So, that's another question. But in terms of being more of that travel companion working with somebody, and that can be done on a one-to-one basis, but that's also a challenge, but an important challenge to be taken up through teamwork. And then the other issues that I've addressed, which are very important influences on how we work with people and our confidence in terms of making decisions. It's those issues around accountability and responsibility, which connects a little bit with Module 1, the risk mindset, because these are areas that can generate some of that fear, some of that blame culture even. Then there's also the issue of confidentiality. Working with people means we're sharing sometimes very sensitive information. So are we clear as to how and when we share that information? Are we transparent with the clients, the people that we work with, about what confidentiality means, why it's important, and the situations in which we need to be sharing information? Or even that very rare occasion when we have to breach confidentiality because of risk issues. How transparent do we feel? It's a tricky discussion, but it's an important discussion. And I like to think one of the points that I've tried to put across in the module suggests that the more transparent and open we are about confidentiality, the less it is used as an issue, as a barrier to working, either by us as workers, that easy was, well, maybe I don't have to do these difficult things because I can always hide behind the notion that, well, it's confidential, so I don't need to do it. But I'm thinking more about the barriers. If we're not transparent, people themselves will have a genuine reason to feel not trusted in us. Why connect with us? It's not clear as to where this information is going to go. So these are all areas that we do need to be clear about in terms of our own practice as well as how we communicate it with others. And I've also very briefly touched on culture and race and risk within this module. I've been upfront to say I'm a white male of European background, so I need to always keep that in mind when I'm thinking about how I connect with people. There is a range of literature and research out there, though it is primarily focused on violence and aggression and criminal justice systems, prison systems, which is quite a degree of prejudice just in the narrow focus that it presents. But again, what I've tried to put across in the brief presentation is it's important for any of us to firstly try to be aware of where some of our even unconscious biases might be influencing how we go about the work, but also how those biases have influenced the design of the tools. When we talk about risk assessment tools, by and large, they are European, American, white designed tools. So there's a lot of issues that we need to be aware of. In a simplistic sense, I've also tried to say that if you look across this course and it talks about principles, it talks about values, it talks about working with people's strengths, and it talks primarily about presenting that as a way of working to everybody equally. I'm going to acknowledge that's a simplistic way, or sounds a simplistic way, but to me, that has always been my starting point. And the key thing is active listening, not jumping to conclusions based on limited information or what might be conscious or unconscious biases that we do hold. So the whole module is about working with people. It's what we do all the time. So it's a crucial part of working with risk, positive risk taking, making good quality, confident, reasoned, defensible risk decisions. And in the next module, module 4, I'll go on to focus very specifically around this whole issue of the strengths approach, working with strengths. Thank you for your attention.